We've got a moderate upset here in the Georgia governor's race. We're going to cover these results plus all the others from yesterday, June 16th, 2026. We've got runoffs, Oklahoma, D.C., and more. But let's get into the biggest race here. This is the runoff for Georgia governor. And Rick Jackson has defeated Burt Jones by about 5% here. Jackson won in and around Atlanta. Jones won most of his counties south and east, but a lot of these margins not too substantial. Jackson is the outsider. He's self-funded. And Burt Jones is the current lieutenant governor. He had the Trump endorsement. I think he also had the Kemp endorsement. And that wasn't enough. Rick Jackson, the winner here, he's going to go on to face Keisha Lance Bottoms, the Democrat, in the general election in November. That race is going to be pretty epic. It could go either way. There's more. We've got the U.S. Senate runoff for the Republicans. This time, the Trump endorsed Mike Collins did win over Derek Dooley. It's about an 11% margin. Dooley won in and around Atlanta. Collins won much of the rest of the state. Collins didn't exactly do extremely well in the counties that he represents in the U.S. House. But we finally got our showdown set for November. Collins is going to take on incumbent Democrat John Ossoff. Collins could make it interesting, but Ossoff is going to have the edge. There's also more statewide races here. We've got lieutenant governor, both sides having runoffs. These aren't the highest profile results. I'm not going to cover these in detail. And we've got the U.S. House. We'll come back to that in just a minute. And some of the lower profile races are right here. Again, feel free to pause it if you'd like. There's not a lot to point out here. I haven't really followed most of these races. There is a special election in the state Senate. This was the general election, and it was close. The Democrats won 51 to 49. Democrats currently held this seat, and they won by a little bit wider margin back in 22. Now let's go through the runoffs in the House. Here's the first district. The winner for the Dems is Amanda Hollowell. She's going to face Republican Jim Kingston in November, and all these House runoffs are heavily favored for the Republicans. Here's the 7th district. Tony Kazicki won the nomination for the Dems. He's going to face Republican Rich McCormick in November. In the 11th district, this is an open seat to replace Republican Barry Loudermilk. John Cowan is the nominee here for the Republicans. Again, he's going to be pretty heavily favored in November. In the 12th district, the runoff winner for the Dems here is Soretta Smith. She's going to face incumbent Republican Rick Allen in November. So that's a quick run through Georgia. Let's jump over to Alabama. We've got some more runoffs. And the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate, not a total blowout here. Barry Moore, the Trump-endorsed candidate, defeated Jared Hudson by about 11.5%. Hudson did his best in and around Birmingham. Moore did his best in counties that he represents in the U.S. House. So Hudson there was the outsider. He certainly made a name for himself. Maybe we'll see him again in the future. But for now, Barry Moore is going to move on to the general, and he's going to face Everett West, the Democrat. A similar margin there for West. In Jefferson County, he won with 59%. So it's going to be Moore against West in November. Moore going to be heavily favored. Then we've got the rest of the action. We've got Lieutenant Governor. Republicans going to be pretty heavily favored in all these races. I'm not going to go into detail. Again, feel free to pause it. There's one U.S. House runoff here in the 5th District. Republicans going to be extremely heavily favored there, but Andrew Snead is going to advance. Then there's the state legislature and a few other races here. Of course, if you're from the state, you're going to want to look at some of these races, especially since a lot of these are pretty close here. Just a 1 or 2 point race here for Public Service Commission. So that's what we've got going on in Alabama. Let's move on to Oklahoma. Here's a big race for governor. This is an open seat. Republicans headed to a runoff here. The top two are Gettner Drummond. He's the attorney general. He's only a little over 26%. Mike Mazie is a little under 26. So a little over 1,000 vote advantage there between Drummond and Mazie. Mazie did get the recent Trump endorsement that propelled him into this second place. And take a look at this map here. A lot of light colors. Nobody running too strong here in any of these counties. In Oklahoma City here, Gettner Drummond leads by a couple of points. There's some controversy about why Mazie got that Trump endorsement. He might have made some sort of donation behind the scenes. Either way, he seems like kind of an awkward candidate to me. Drummond, it seems like he would be stronger. But these are some low percentages here. You've also got Chip Keating, son of a former governor here. So it's a good thing that we're headed to a runoff and somebody is not going to be the nominee with less than a third of the vote. Now, the runoffs here are in August, and whoever wins this is going to go out of the general and face Democrat Cindy Munson. She secured her nomination outright with about 75% of the vote. Same thing here in Oklahoma County. It is one of the redder states out there. In the past, they have elected more moderate or mild Democrats. With polarization, even in a blue-leaning environment, Dems likely to face a pretty big uphill climb. Let's move on to the U.S. Senate here. This one not a surprise at all. U.S. Rep Kevin Hern is going to be the nominee to replace Mark Wayne Mullen, who recently stepped down. He's just under 70%. He's going to face either Nicalia Jasmine Thomas or Jim Priest. Those two are headed to a runoff in August. Whoever it is, again, Hern going to be the strong favorite. Here's a few more statewide races. We've got Lieutenant Governor. T.W. Shannon for the Republicans wins it outright. He's going to face Kelly Forbes. Then we've got the U.S. House. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Then it's the legislature. Then we've got a ballot question here on minimum wage. This would have raised it $1.50 a year over the next 5 years up to $15. This actually failed by about 11%. In Oklahoma County, it was yes, 60-40, and in Tulsa, it's 54-46. But in all the other counties, it was pretty decisively no. I'm not sure why it failed, but it might have been viewed as a little bit too dramatic for this redder state. Then the last of the statewide races here. Unless you're from this state, you're probably not going to care too much about these results, but they're here if you want to take a look at them. Now we've got one U.S. House race to look at. This is the first district to replace Kevin Hearn, who of course we just saw run for the Senate. It is going to be a runoff here between Mark Tedford and Jackson Lahmeyer. I'm pretty sure he did have the Trump endorsement. He didn't get in first place, but he could easily win it in the runoff. Whoever wins it is very likely to win in November. Before we get to DC, we've got one special election in the U.S. House. We're in California this time. Here's the 14th district. This is to replace the seat of Eric Swalwell, who of course resigned earlier in the year. This is going to go to a runoff. We've got Aisha Wahab at about 42%. Of course, California takes a long time to count. So we're not positive who her opponent is going to be. Right now, it's Melissa Hernandez if everything holds. So Dems looking to get another seat back in the U.S. House, but they're going to have to wait until August 18th. Finally, it's Washington, D.C. Let's get right into the mayor's race. Janice Lewis George. She has a clear majority right now at about 53%. Kenyon McDuffie is at about 37. There is ranked choice voting here, but it doesn't really matter if somebody's going to clear 50. So unless something crazy happens, Lewis George is going to be the next mayor here. She's viewed as further to the left, could pose a challenge for the Trump administration. Then we've got the U.S. delegate here. This is actually an open seat. So there'll be a new face here in this seat. Robert White is the winner. After that, there's the city council, there's attorney general. Once you go past mayor, I don't think these races matter too much. This is pretty much the absolute bluest place out there. I don't even know if it's possible for any Republican to ever get even slightly close here, even against a terrible Democrat. Even in Reagan's 1984 landslide, where he won the national popular vote by 18%, he still lost DC by 70. And that was 4 decades ago. Any Democrat is going to win any race here, period. When it's super blue or super red territory, it really all comes down to the primaries. So we'll see how these DC races affect things with the nearby Trump administration. So that's a recap of the action from June 16th. Let me know in the comments, what do you think of these results in Georgia or Alabama? Who's going to be the nominee for governor in Oklahoma? What about this race for DC mayor? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.